I want to thank Teresa and Rick Ryan. Rick's here. I appreciate your having us here.
A round of applause.
Yes, absolutely.
A standing ovation. A silent cheer.
It's a beautiful place. Had a chance to talk with Rick about his sheep and his chickens, and a bit about the blueberries that are behind us here. Blueberries. So hopefully we'll get a chance next year. This afternoon we're here to listen to the next senators from the 51st and the 58th districts. And I don't want to steal any of their comments and only say that Upstate needs these two voices in the Senate to represent local farms, small businesses, and our working and middle class families. We will first hear from Jim Barber. Jim is a fifth-generation farmer, and that alone should be sufficient to tell you that he can speak for Upstate Farms. I'm sure I need to say a lot more, but I will. Jim has, on occasion, left the farm, and he served on his local school board, something I can relate to. Been a special assistant to the New York State Commissioner of Ag and Markets, co-founded New York State Farms, started the first in the country farm-to-school program. Fantastic. Served on the state board of the Farm Bureau, and he's been president of the New York State Vegetable Growers Association. So I guess he's left the farm.
Those are all nighttime jobs.
Great. His will be a clear voice for local farms and the communities surrounded by those farms. Ladies and gentlemen, the next senator from the 51st District, Jim Barber.
All right.
Okay. Just leave this here on the podium. It's good.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fine. There are
All right.
a few
Well,
actually.
thank you, and thank you for having us here, Brad. Thank you very much for the introduction. And school board members and business owners, I think we have a lot we can agree on the issues we're trying to address here. Rick, thank you and Teresa for letting us be at your place here. It's beautiful. I want to give a tour around before we leave here. I'm trying to get this in before it rains, but I like the chance to chat and just hear what you're all about. And I think really you look at young folks getting into agriculture. And this is one of the things we're trying to address here: is how do we make it easier for people to in agriculture? They're very inventive. There's a lot of ingenuity in how you can actually get going and keep going. But it's very difficult in farming, or in New York, to get started in farming. So, and I want to thank Leslie. Thanks, Burke. Good friend now. We met just a little while ago, but I'm very excited to be next year. All goes well. We have a lot of common interests, and there's a lot we can work on together. So, the motto here at Underhill is stay, pick, play. Which honestly, that's what we really want for all of upstate New York. We want this a place where people can choose to stay and afford to stay, start a business, raise a family, retire here. This is what we want. But the broken tax system we have in New York makes that very difficult. For over 40 years, I've working with New York Farm Bureau, and as a fifth-generation farmer, business owner in New York State, we've been fighting the unfair property tax system in New York to try to resolve it. The heavy reliance on property taxes is an archaic system dating back to the colonial era, unrelated completely to someone's ability to pay those taxes. Now the economic shutdown from the COVID crisis has clearly exposed the economic inequalities of this system. Your property taxes will not be reduced if your business was shut down or you are unemployed. There's no relationship to what you can afford to pay. And the reason our property taxes are so high in New York State is that Albany pushes down the cost of funding Medicaid and other state mandated programs unfunded program onto the county. It's shouldered by rural residents from our taxes on our homes, businesses, and farms. Albany refuses still to pay its fair share of school funding, not living up to its obligation under foundation rate. So those additional costs are also pushed down onto the property owners in rural counties. But right now, we have the best opportunity, perhaps the only opportunity in our lifetime, to make sure that we can make these changes, get them in effect. The massive deficits built up under the COVID crisis will require our policymakers in Albany to address that crisis and to figure out, take bold steps on how to address it. And now with so many people unemployed, so many businesses struggling to survive, the current system of relying on property taxes to support essential services like health care and education is clearly not sustainable. We cannot continue that way. And that's why we need advocates like Leslie and I to represent upstate taxpayers in Albany. We need to make sure that we are represented in the majority conference and that we can get these initiatives passed. We must rethink how we pay for our schools and municipal institutions. Schools, Medicaid, county operations are all funded largely through property taxes in our rural counties. But those taxes are a remnant, as I said, of an outdated system and have little relationship with someone's ability to pay them. Taxpayers suffer, and so do our local communities, while Wall Street traders, big corporations pay lower tax rate than we do to our paychecks. They use loopholes, gimmicks, rebates to make sure that they are earning much more than us, working folks, paychecks, small businesses, what we earn through the cash register of our business. It's unfair. We need to change it. In New York State, we can, and we must close those loopholes, make sure the large financial institutions and the super wealthy pay their fair share so that we can level the playing field. And that includes closing the carried interest loophole, the pass-through income loophole, fairly taxing multinational corporations that just received a tremendous rebate from the, or tax break from the federal government. But we are competing, our local corporations are competing with the folks that just received this tremendous tax rebate. We need to fix that. The stock buyback rebate needs to be fixed. And this is what Warren Buffett talks about when he says he pays a lower tax rate than his secretary. That's exactly what he's talking about. The folks with most income, the folks who most afford to pay the taxes are paying less than we are, a lower rate than the folks who are working. In some cases, those corporations aren't paying any tax. We need to create a fair system so that the people who are self-employed, run a small business, and earn their living through a paycheck have an equal shot at being successful. Thank you.
Here, here. Thanks, Jim. We'll have a chance for some questions in a minute. We'll have a chance for you to ask questions.
Get the speeches in before it rains.
Exactly. Exactly. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Leslie Danks Burke. Leslie has lived in the 58th District for 15 years. But my, how busy those 15 years have been in service to our community. Her activities have included the county library, the community college, and importantly, founding Planned Parenthood of Southern Finger Lakes Action. Her passion for our region is both obvious and contagious. Her concerns span from children in poverty, to rural health care, to fair school funding, to preserving our local farms and bolstering our working and middle class families. She will be a senator to represent the citizens of the 58th District and replace the lobbyist from Barclay Damon. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Leslie Danks Burke.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, Rick and Teresa, for having us at such a beautiful place and for holding off the rain for us. My parents are farmers, and they have told me that they haven't figured out how to manage the weather yet, so you're going to have to give them some tips. Rick, you seem to know how to do it. Thank you all for joining us here today. I want to talk about how everything is wrong with Upstate's property taxes. Not only are our property taxes the highest in the nation, we in Upstate pay more relative to the value of our homes and businesses and farms than anywhere else in New York State. We pay more than New York City, more than rich areas like Long Island and Westchester, and we pay much, much more than we can afford. On top of being high, these taxes are regressive. They hit us harder than other taxes do. They're killing our region. Working families, middle-class families, they pay a bigger part of their paycheck to property taxes than the billionaires downstate do. And that's killing us. It makes it hard to live here. It makes it almost impossible to start a business here. Worst of all, it means that our kids, our grandkids, those babies that we've raised, they grow up and our friends and neighbors are all forced to move away because they can't find a good job and they just can't afford to stay. These taxes are killing us upstate, but I've got some news. Jim Barber and I are here to save upstate from these taxes. And Jim and I are going to do it by delivering the upstate tax cut now that our families deserve. Right now, the politicians in Albany, Democrats like Governor Cuomo and Republicans like my opponent, Senator Tom O'Mara, they will say anything. But at the end of the day, they're voting the other way. They won't fight for us or give us this tax break because those Albany politicians like Cuomo and O'Mara like having our money to spend. O'Mara and Cuomo reach into your pocket, they pull out those desperately needed dollars, and then they claim that they're doing everything they can do to help, but they're not. Look, how much of a lie is this lip service? Here's how much. Mr. O'Mara voted 8 times, 8 years in a row, against lowering property taxes, sticking us with the bill for Medicaid when every single other state in the country funds it at the state level. That costs us a lot of money. In counties like Steuben County, we've got one of the highest poverty rates in the state, but because of the Albany tax scam, we've also got one of the highest tax rates in the country. In Chemung County, we fork over 89 cents of every property tax dollar to New York State. Think about that, 89 cents on every dollar. That leaves 11 cents for the folks in Chemung County. That's insane, and it is choking jobs out of our region. That's why we need the upstate tax cut now. These Albany politicians like Cuomo and O'Mara, they don't get me. They don't understand why a Democrat like me would fight as hard as I do for lowering taxes. But my story is pretty simple. My husband and me, we moved here 16 years ago, and we love it here. A lot more people do the opposite. My husband and I have 2 children, and they're growing up, and I love them, and I don't want them to leave. But I see how so many people around here, their children move away. And until we turn that around, Upstate will always struggle, and families like yours and mine will get left behind by Albany. New York State needs Upstate for our farms, for our colleges, our tech centers, our graduates. The state needs us, but then Albany guts us with a ridiculous for-profit Medicaid scheme that taxes us too much, bankrupts middle-class homeowners and local businesses. It starves our towns and our counties of money that we need for our schools, our rural broadband. We're helping people survive the recession that's coming at us. Albany will never solve a problem that isn't in their face. And right now, they don't see us at all because we're not at the table. Heck, we're not even in the room. Our senator, who's supposed to fight for us, cozies up to the lobbyists and Albany power brokers while we get left hanging. He's why we don't get the upstate tax cut now. He's why our region keeps getting pushed down. And it's why we're going to change things this November. We're going to send a message to Albany loud and clear that we have had enough. We are done with this game, and we are going to save Upstate by getting folks like me and Jim at the table, folks who actually fight for us every single day. Thank you very much. I think Jim and I are happy to take questions that are on topic now, and then we can move to off-topic questions separately if folks have questions. Jim?
Sure.
I'll stay more than 6 feet.
All right. That's windy.
Any on-topic questions?
It's my fault. I was a little late. Could you go into a little more a specific overview of what the upstate tax cut would look like for taxpayers?
The actual tax plan. So the tax cut is a result of being able to create a revenue stream, which is basically a more fair system than the current revenues are currently raised in New York. So we cut local property taxes by the state taking over all those programs. At 89 cents of every tax dollar she's talking about, those are state programs mandated that counties pay for. So the plan is to create a system which taxes the Wall Street corporations, investment companies, real estate speculators, tax them all fairly at the same rate that all the rest of us are paying. It creates a tremendous amount of revenue that we can use, that the state can use to pay for all these programs they're forcing down on property taxes.
Exactly. So every other state in the country does it differently than New York State. What every other state does is they pay for these programs like Medicaid at the state level, which means that it's spread out across a larger population of people, and it's also spread out across a wealthier population of people. For New York not to pay for that at the state level means that we're paying for it by the people at the bottom of the heap. The people at the bottom of the heap are subsidizing the people at the top. 49 other states don't do it that way. It's the wrong way to do it. So Jim and I stand for moving that regressive tax structure so that it's paid for at the state level, which means it's fairly distributed across the rest of the population.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, even the state recognizes that the property tax inhibits businesses from getting started in New York State. Because the first thing we do when we try to encourage a company to come to the state is we let them not pay property taxes for 10 years. The rest of us, the businesses that have been here for 5 generations or 10 years or whatever it is, they're still paying their property taxes. So they've identified what the problem is. Let's do something about it. It holds back growth here in upstate rural New York.
I wonder if you could speak to the property tax rate you had mentioned in, for instance, Chemung and Steuben County about how they pay such a high property tax rate.
Yeah, so the actual property tax rate has to keep on going up in order to pay for these programs that in every other state are paid for at the state level. So basically, think about it this way: if you have 1,000 people chipping into a dinner party, then the rate per person is going to be a lot less than if you only have 10 people chipping in for a dinner party. Because at that dinner party, you still have to rent the space, you still have to have, the wait staff. Once you get up to 1,000 people, you can spread it across a bigger group. So what New York State does is it pushes it down so that only the few of us are paying for the whole big group. We want to shift that so that the whole group is paying their fair share. Right now, the folks at the bottom are subsidizing the people at the top.
And I mean, the state has capped the amount at which property taxes can be increased each year because that's supposed to placate us, but they haven't reduced the amount that the cost of the state programs that are mandated down onto the county. So basically, they're capping the amount of money we have left to take care of our roads, our government, our county operations. And that's what they're capping. They're not capping the state expenses, which is the problem in the first place.
Anything off topic now, folks? Kevin, anything?
Oh no, I just wanted to talk to Rick.
Wonderful.